welcome to another CSD Fantasy YouTube video featuring the Denver Broncos' 2017 score projection, who is the last team out of this 2017 preseason. Let's do as we always do and start off by looking at the team's opportunity pool that derives from the 2017 opponents' play trends from the last 2 years and the Broncos' own trends from the last 3 years. These two stats combine and will later on be divided up amongst the players. So for the 2017 season, the Broncos will pass the ball 588 times and run it 402 times from the opponents. And from their own team trends, they will see .594 passes and run it 421. For the entire season, their pool will be comprised of 591 passes and 412 runs. The passing pool is pretty big, but this week we have some new stuff as the QB position will shake things up. So for the Broncos market share, I've decided not to include the quarterback runs due to the fact that we don't know who's going to be the long-term quarterback over the season. Siemian is the one who I have used for the 16 games for the receiving element of the score projection. CJ Anderson is my projected #1 running back for the Broncos. This is hopefully not a big surprise to anyone, and remember, all projections are for 16 games and full health. CJ sees a lot of change in his yards per carry depending on what down he plays, so if you believe he will have a hard time against a team on first time, it might impact how you feel about him later on in that game. The same can't be said for how he produced it in different times of the game, however. From the opportunity pool and market share, he gets 183 carries, 42 targets, and 28 receptions. Scoring 79.2 fantasy points from his rushing, 25.6 from his receiving, and 48 from his touchdowns. With the limited pool, he's very efficient, and all in all, he lands at 152.8 fantasy points over the season. I decided to put Jamaal Charles as their second running back. I thought it would be more interesting for fantasy that way, and now with Booker on PUP, it seems like the better option. So for the running back #2 for the Broncos, he will see 120 carries and 31 targets. Charles will catch 20 of those and score 57.9 fantasy points from his rushing, 21.8 from his receiving, and 42 from touchdowns. However, this opportunity pool can land on Booker, so be careful with that. In the case Booker comes back and takes the role as the #2 running back in Denver, he will get the 120 carries and 31 target, but only catch 19 of those targets. He will score 42.2 from his rushing, 16.7 from the receiving, and 18 points from touchdowns. Keep that in mind as we get closer to the season and keep track of who will get that #2 role. Looking at the two main receivers and the #1 tight end, we first have Demaryius as wide receiver #1. From the opportunity pool and market share, he lands at 167 targets and 99 receptions. From that, he will gain 1,272.8 yards and score 7 touchdowns. He is one of my mostly hyped players of this offseason due to the fact that I believe he's being drafted way below this value. Landing on 127.3 fantasy points over the season, and will compete against the likes of Des Bryant while being outscored by Odell Beckham. Emmanuel is an incredible #2 receiver with 138 targets and 86 receptions, which makes him a PPR stud. He will gain most of his fantasy points from yards with 111 and 42 points from touchdowns. Sanders will be surrounded by the end of the season by players like Michael Thomas and Des Bryant. As their #1 tight end, I put Virgil Green, and he's not someone that gets me going. From the market share, he will see 57 targets and catch 37 of those. His yards from the workload is decent, but only 3 touchdowns, which is pretty bad. With 60.7 total fantasy points, he's behind players like Julius Thomas while outscoring Jared Cook. To round out this video, let's do as we always do and look at the projections in the light of last year. CJ Anderson to me is extremely draftable. He's now going in round 8 and has top 25 potential. Charles and Booker feels like options to pick up later in your draft for players to take a shot at. Demaryius Thomas, as I said before, is probably my most hyped player of this offseason, and I'm looking to pick him up everywhere I can. Emmanuel Sanders is not far behind, and I will try to get him too. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Head over to csdfantasy.com for more charts and numbers. And as always, the spreadsheets are dark and full of terror.